Today, the buy now, pay later credit card duck just got shot. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and prop news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, as I've said before, if it quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck, and that's certainly true with regards to credit provision via buy now, pay later services. It is a credit product, and yet it is not regulated as such until now. In fact, an estimated 7 million buy now, pay later users could soon see new laws which will be introduced by the federal government that aims to give better protection against financial services abuse. That's because a new Treasury paper released by the Financial Services Minister Stephen Jones today suggests that buy now, pay later players could soon be subject to the same laws as credit card providers, as unaffordable or inappropriate lending practices are contributing to financial stress and hardship and other types of consumer harm. Well, we certainly see that in spades in our surveys. The paper said that there were more than 7 million active buy now, pay later accounts in 2021, resulting in about $16 billion worth of transactions. That's an increase of almost 37% over the previous financial year. The Treasury paper makes it clear self-regulation without some controls is no longer an option. That's, of course, what the industry did to try and avoid regulation earlier on, claiming they were going to control themselves. And it raises a bunch of issues, noting that there's been reports of poor complaints handling processes and that the lack of hardship assistance for consumers leads to delayed or unsatisfactory remediation. It said frictionless sign-up to buy now, pay later products enhances other consumer harms such as scamming, overselling, and financial abuse. And it also raises other issues, including excessive and disproportionate fees and charges being imposed relative to the size of the consumer's debt. And it notes a survey of consumers carried out by the corporate watchdog ASIC earlier this year found that 19% of buy now, pay later consumers surveyed cut back or went without essentials to make repayments on time. And another ASIC report, which was based on more detailed analysis of the industry last year, found that 1 in 5 consumers are missing payments, which means, of course, they get hit with fees. And interestingly, in my surveys, those under financial stress are even more likely to be missing payments and therefore incurring significant fees. The Treasury paper also notes that poor product disclosure practices and the lack of warning requirements means consumers do not have sufficient information to make informed choices, and that unsolicited selling and advertising practices targeting consumers encourage the use of buy now, pay later essentials such as groceries and utilities. And frankly, the idea of paying your electricity bill by buy now, pay later is an anathema, certainly to me. So moves to regulate Australia's booming $16 billion buy now, pay later sector, which could include bringing Afterpay and Zip under existing rules of credit cards, alongside a new sliding unsuitability test, are on the cards. And as it pushes ahead with plans to increase regulations on buy now, pay later by the middle of 2023, the Albanese government said that in the discussion paper there were 3 options possible for reform, including expanding the National Consumer Credit Protection Act. The weakest proposed change would introduce additional industry self-regulation plus a new affordability test requirement for buy now, pay later products. The toughest option would see buy now, pay later products brought completely into the Credit Act, following the same rules as credit cards and other traditional debt products. A middle ground, perhaps the most realistic for the sector's 7 million accounts, could bring buy now, pay later partly into the Credit Act, and providers would be required to hold an Australian credit licence and follow responsible lending obligations with a sliding unsuitability test applied to products. Though frankly, my view is that this is a credit product. If it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Under the test, a credit product would be considered unsuitable for a person if it was likely that they would be unable to comply with their financial obligations or would face substantial hardship to do so. Part of the problem here, of course, is that households will prioritise repaying buy now, pay later over other things they should be paying for. Currently, financial products offered by companies such as Afterpay and Zip fall outside the legal definition of credit, as they do not charge interest and have short repayment cycles. The British and New Zealand governments are also considering new regulations for the growing buy now, pay later sector. In Australia, total accounts grew from 5 million to 7 million last financial year, and interestingly, most are held by consumers aged between 18 and 34, although not exclusively. I do see some older people in my surveys using them too. Data from the Reserve Bank of Australia's Payment Systems Board showed consumers spent around $16 billion on buy now, pay later in the financial year 21 to 22. That's equivalent of about 2% of Australian card purchases. Australians are some of the most enthusiastic adopters of new technology on the planet. Assistant Treasurer Stephen Jones said, "They love the convenience of buy now, pay later, but they want to know it's safe. We need to find that happy medium, balancing consumer protection with innovative new products." Financial Counselling Australia has been leading a push for tougher regulation of buy now, pay later, alongside the Consumer Action Law Centre, the Financial Rights Legal Centre and other advocacy groups. And buy now, pay later providers launched their own voluntary code of conduct in February 2021. It's not a law and it's not enforceable. Signatories who fail to comply with the code's obligations faced no penalties. The code formalised a range of existing practices to ensure a minimum standard across the industry while pushing all providers to improve their monitoring of existing customers. But research by the corporate regulator ASIC found that 19% of buy now, pay later consumers cut back or went without essentials to make repayments on time, and almost a quarter of buy now, pay later users experienced a financial stress indicator on the respected Household Income and Labour Dynamics survey, while 19% experienced 2 or more stress indicators. The indicators include inability to pay utility bills, mortgage repayments, rent, going without meals, being unable to heat the home, or seeking help from friends, family, or welfare organisations. The discussion paper says some buy now, pay later providers have reported implementing risk managing practices for consumers, including credit checks, consideration of bank account information and lower credit limits. Treasury said ASIC's industry funding arrangements might need to be extended if buy now, pay later is included under the Credit Act to recover the costs of regulating the buy now, pay later from the sector. Providers including Afterpay, Bright, NAB, Zip and PayRight will be consulted along with peak industry bodies, regulators and consumer groups. And responses to the discussion paper will close on December the 23rd, and of course I will be making a submission based on my survey data. My concern will be that the government will be too weak and will move not far enough to be able to control this critical sector. And at the moment, with interest rates rising, with more households getting into difficulty just trying to pay the mortgage, guess what? The use of buy now, pay later among these cohorts is going through the roof. So we do need tighter regulation, and we need it now. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.